we asked solvers to create a product or service that would bridge the communications gap between academia and the private sector. We heard a lot about that today in various forms, and that in turn could help us close that all-important skills gap that we've been talking about analysing today. Well, the challenge was met with overwhelming success. Over 870 interested solvers, which is encouraging, I think, when we look at the challenge we all have in front of us in education and the workplace, and over 200 submissions. Today, we bring you the top 3 finalists. In a moment, they're going to present their ideas live in the Shark Tank style presentation. I think of the Shark Think Tank might be something entirely different. So it's all, don't worry, it's all going to be very quick, very snappy, and there will be time to just take it in while the judges then huddle and give their verdict of the gods. Now, we're going to hear briefly from the judges and what they're looking for in a winning business plan, and then the finalists will come up one by one and present you their ideas. And the judges will have a short amount of time to pose questions. Once everybody is presented, we will convene, and then very shortly afterwards, we will give you the results and, of course, hand over the all-important winner's check. So, Doreen, do start us off here and tell us really what you're looking for in this challenge. How high is the bar?
Sure. Thanks, Anne. Good afternoon, everybody. I have a little bit of a unique vantage point in this, on this judging panel. I have 4 years of experience in higher education, essentially leading the MBA Career Center at Georgetown University. We have about 1,000 MBA students altogether, executive MBAs, full-time MBAs, working professionals, and we also serve our alumni base from a careers perspective. I also have quite a bit of experience in the private sector. The last 15 years of my experience in the private sector actually was running recruiting at 4 different companies in 3 different industries. So I've got a bit of a perspective on talent acquisition, quite a perspective on talent acquisition in terms of skills, both soft and hard, and looking forward to being able to test the practical side of these solutions from both the higher ed perspective and the private sector perspective.
So you're going to focus particularly on applicability, practicality, and whether it could be turned around. Is time frame important to you? Time
frame is important. It always is. So yes, as well.
Great. Okay. Jamie, the Lumina Foundation, tell me what you're going to bring to this.
Yeah, you know, I think this is coming at a very appropriate time, I think, in the trajectory of our national conversation about talent development in the United States. The fact is the demand for talent is growing more and more rapidly each day. And so in order to be able to meet that demand, most of which needs to be developed in post-secondary learning contexts, we've got to figure out a way to better align what higher education is and is producing and what employers say they need and what they're getting out of the higher education system. Of course, as you've heard at this meeting, and as we've seen from lots of national studies, the disconnect between higher education and employers is quite large. So what I'm looking for out of these 3, each of which I think is going to present a very different concept, is not only something that's practical, which I certainly agree with Doreen, but that gets at the fundamental issue here of times wasting. We have a serious challenge on our hands. The gap between those with the right talent and skills and abilities and what they're able to do in the labor force and those without is growing very rapidly. We see that in employment data, wages, and other ways. And we've got to find practical tools that can be applied to help bring those 2 sectors together. So that's what I'm looking for from these 3 today.
One might say there must be quite a lot of thinking going on about this. You're probably familiar with a lot of it. What are you looking for that's maybe been in somewhat short supply in the very good innovative practices or ideas that come across your desk regularly?
Yeah, you know, what we see a lot of is 2 things. One is things that are about taking existing ideas to scale, things that have been developed for an extended period of time, and things that are in the very early incubation stage. Most of these are a little bit beyond the incubation stage. They've actually developed a fuller idea here. And so this fits somewhere in between. What I like about these 3 is that they all have the potential to be scaled fairly quickly. So what I want to find from the 3 of them here is what do they think it's going to take their ideas and bring them to scale rapidly. In our case, our view is that we have a limited amount of time to meet the country's demand for talent. If we don't meet that demand, we're either going to deal with very serious consequences, not only economically, but in terms of our immigration strategy and our public policy challenges related to that. So we've got to tackle this quickly, take good ideas, bring them to scale fast.
Great. So we've got a race for talent, but also a race against time seems
Indeed.
to be quite high up on your list. Now, Jamie, you learn capital, you bring a financial perspective to this, rather important, great ideas, but without any idea of finance behind them have been wasted on the desert air many times before in this sector and others. So what are you going to bring to your judging?
Sure. Yeah. As the panelist here wearing the venture capital hat, I guess one of the things that we really try to look for in companies or projects is essentially double differentiation, right? So not only do we want a differentiated offering, we also want a differentiated path to market. And companies generally succeed or fail not by the merit of their ideas or the merit of their team or the greatness of their product, but whether or not they can get to market more quickly than everyone else. And so a differentiated path to market that works. Another thing is quantified validation and traction. Entrepreneurs often get a lot of very positive feedback and encouragement from the world. They also go through a school of hard knocks as well. But they come in and they say, everyone needs this, everyone says we're wonderful, my customers love it, but they haven't really actually sharpened the saw there and come up with a quantified way to measure validation and traction. So those are things that I'm going to be looking for in addition to scalability and a credibly large business opportunity, because we do have to respect the business of venture capital, which is to create returns for our investors.
You're sounding really tough. I mean, to get past you, they're going to have to be pretty smart, all of you. Right, okay, now let us welcome to the stage, please, the first competitor. It's Aaron Wren. Aaron, if you could just come up and give us your pitch.
People leave companies for all kinds of reasons, right? Some people hate their jobs. Others, they flat out fail. And a lot of times what we see is they then go on to big success somewhere else, and we're like, what happened? And in these cases, what we had was a simple mismatch between the person and the job. Probably not really a skills issue, right? Because we're pretty good at screening for skills today. And with hiring a replacement running about a third of a position's annual salary, that's an expensive mismatch problem. I want to attack it focused on entry-level, right out of college placement. And that's because college students who don't have a lot of work experience yet are at particular risk of having a bad job match. I'm going to apply predictive analytics to the problem. Companies and schools have tons of proprietary data about their students and employees going back a long way, right? Performance ratings, strengths and weaknesses assessment, sports participation, clubs, sororities. I want to take that, combine it with social graph, resume, and other third-party data, then apply statistical techniques to create profiles of the kinds of people who are most likely to succeed in particular industries or firms, and use that for career counseling and placement of students. Here's what it looks like. Again, I'm not looking at skills here. What we're looking for are variables that proxy other fit factors for the job, such as culture. We may find, for example, that some companies are extremely political in their office culture, so people who are involved in student government just tend to do a lot better there because of the interest and the aptitude for navigating politics. This type of analysis has been successfully applied to many other domains, so I'm very confident it'll work here. Right here in New York, the fire department is already combining data from many sources to create profiles of the kinds of buildings that are most likely to burn down so they can proactively inspect. Right now, LinkedIn will tell you your odds of getting a particular job that you just applied for. I want to do something similar, focus on entry-level, post-collegiate stuff. Students is where LinkedIn is weak, and looking not just at the here and now, but at the long-term success. I propose starting small and lean with a select group of universities and firms to develop it. Because of the sensitive nature of this data, the highest degree of ethics, security, et cetera, need to be applied. So I suggest partnering with Lumina on this, who I believe would bring credibility in those areas, and whose grant-making capacity is a powerful incentive for universities to get on board. Here's how we do it. We look at a classic lean startup model, we get mobilized, we prove out the value in the business case, we pivot if we need to, and then when we've got it proven, we aggressively scale out. Students get better launched into their life and career, firms save money and improve morale, and universities better succeed in their mission. I call that a win-win-win. Thank you.
Great, brilliantly timed. Can I just say, I think I'm going to add, a sort of candy sort of to the prize, all the contestants who managed to stick to time. Now, Erin, okay, I was going along with that quite happily, and I suddenly thought about me. And I wonder how many other people are saying, oh, yeah, hang on a minute, how much would I really like this? An awful lot of data is gathered on all of us. We're still in a kind of negotiation, really, about that, aren't
Exactly.
we? If you look at the, Google, Facebook, and all these arguments. And your model seems to make me have to be prepared, indeed quite happy and optimistic about all my kind of development, my mistakes, my missteps along the way being shared. Why should I be happy about that?
Well, first off, I think it's inevitable that we're going to have an employability score similar to a credit score based on many of these same factors. The incentive structure for firms is so high, they're going to develop proprietary models of this anyway. I think it's a little creepy, right? Just like the credit score, does that really sum up who we are as a person? And that's why I really want to take this and create profiles that are sort of like narratives, to be able to tell a story about the kind of person who succeeds, because I think that's more approachable. I think it's more feasible with current technology and more approachable and less risky. We see this all the time with market segmentation and analysis. So here's the kids in cul-de-sacs, demographics, here's the this demographics. That's sort of what I'm talking about, those generalized profiles that I think are less threatening to us, particularly since everyone can be positive, right? There's a lot of, listening to the conversations like, we suck, we gotta do better, we gotta do better. I'm focusing on, hey, we're doing a lot of things right. We're delivering a lot of value out of higher ed. Let's just get that value deployed successfully. That's what I wanna do.
There's a lot of emphasis, particularly in the States, about learning from mistakes, about, this is a country where you can go bankrupt, get up again, and no one will kind of blame you for it. This is often something that we're told in Europe about America. But surely this model would very largely depend on me kind of marking down potential employees because of weaknesses. So how would I still know how to balance that off against, this person, he mucked that up and he wasn't so great at this, or she. But, this is the person that I should want in my organization.
Well, we're targeting students, and we are looking back at the history of people who have already kind of how their career has progressed to kind of develop the models. But it's really not about you're a success or you're a failure. It's about people and getting them who can be successful and finding the environment for them to be successful in, right? For example, the woman from Goldman was talking about, we need to have people who thrive in really uncertain environments, who embrace that. And maybe we just look at people who went to school in an environment far, far, far away or radically different from where they grew up. That's a proxy for someone that embraces discomfort. Right. And those people, so we're routing them to the right environment.
I'm just going to jump in on you now because I'd really like to get your questions in from the judges.
So data is going to be aggregated from a variety of sources. And I'm trying to figure out how you launch here. So who owns this? Who actually, do you own this if you're the individual, if you're the employee? Who actually owns the record, if you will?
Mm-hmm. The data, I would say underlying the data, it's kind of a multi-client database. So the data would be owned by the universities and the firms who are supplying it. They would supply it to us under contract, that it would be held in a confidential matter. That's already done today.
But the individual's got to sign off on that, right? You're going to have to get the privacy agreement in order for them to sign off on the use of their individually identifiable data, aren't you?
Well, today we do, I thought about this in terms of like how we already do research on HIPAA compliant data. And I've already researched a platform, there's a company in Indianapolis that'll do it, well, they will merge data sets together and then hide all the personally identifiable information.
The identifiers.
We're not interested in individuals here. Yeah. We're interested in profiles of people. I'm not looking to, see what I'm saying?
Doreen.
What kind of research have you done on, I'm thinking with my recruiting hat on, right? My corporate hat on. What sort of research have you done about profiles that already exist for recruiting?
Frankly, I haven't seen a lot of those. If I look at the average job application, right, it's all about skills and kind of very generic soft skill stuff, right? Lucy Kellaway at the Financial Times has made a career of mocking them. And so I'm looking at a completely different mechanism of, let's look at the stuff that really matters. You know, I worked for Accenture. Everybody we hired has skills, hard skills and soft skills. It's really, are you a cultural fit in this firm? I'm sure that's the same case at Goldman. I'm sure it's a big case in higher ed. So I'm looking for things like cultural fit that I think have been underserved, but I'm not aware of anyone who's done something in that area.
Okay, thank you.
Jamie, you emphasized route to market. Was that on your mind throughout the presentation or something else?
Path to market.
Path to market.
Not this particular time. It's a bit early, I think, to be making to do anything but test at this point. Also, it seemed like the best path to market was to obligate Jamie from Lumina to a partnership here on stage, right? Which I thought was a very differentiated path to market.
Points for Hoodspot.
No, my question is, there are a lot of constituents that you're talking about. Who is your actual customer? And if there are multiple constituents that you believe are your customer, can you force rank them?
Right, well, I think this is a two-sided marketplace with universities and firms on it. I believe the profiles are an important piece of it, but I see a lot of other data that could be used for competitive benchmarking coming out of it. You know, Gartner Group already provides the same sort of anonymized pool, you know, compare versus a pool. How is Purdue's engineering grads fare in the energy sector versus a peer group of other universities? We can pull stuff out of there. The limits of what you can do with this are limitless. But I really see that as kind of two main customers: the universities who are looking to better place students and make a case for themselves, and companies that want to recruit better. And I'm relying on Lumina's research that says they're willing to partner and they're willing to share this data.
There's no getting out of that one then. Well, thank you very much for starting us off there, Aaron. I think you can stand down for a moment.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you. All right, our next contender, Arnold Packer. Arnold, could you please take the stage?
I'm going to talk about the verified resume, which is a skills-based certificate that is a catalyst for learning the soft skills. There is the first column of one that I gave out to a young man. It lists 7 out of 30 soft skills. They're all generic, but they all apply to the job he did for me. The next slide is 2 of those 7 skills, how he performed them, and what was my grade for them. And the third slide is just my name on the bottom. That's what makes it verified. The verified resumes have been widely tested and with positive results. This is one that you've seen is one of several hundred VRs that have already been issued in pilot programs. The problem they address is the gap found by the Lumina Gallup poll between what college provosts believe and what employers know. That gap cannot be closed unless college teaching is transformed. Faculty have to teach soft skills like communication and teamwork, use projects, and do more. Change is difficult, but Catherine Manis, who's the senior VP at the American Association of Community Colleges, told me, quote, "This VR aligns with efforts to integrate college with industry demands." Employers have to play the major role, however. Pamela Pork is VP for HR at Johns Hopkins. Her office receives over 150,000 applications a year. She says, quote, "I love this idea. Having an assessment from trusted sources would be very helpful for our recruiters." I've had conversations with LinkedIn. They also have a goal of wanting to close the gap. My vision is colleges depositing verified resumes in LinkedIn. Your first question may be, can I be sure about the grades I gave out? Remember that the incentives facing colleges will tend to make the VR trustworthy. In discussions with Doug Becker of Laureate, who spoke earlier, Doug emphasized to me that reliable assessments are keys to Laureate's reputation. Remember that endorsements to LinkedIn come from all sorts of folk. Also, we have data. In one large-scale pilot, Mentors followed up with subsequent supervisors about the grades. The difference was only 1/3 of a point on a 5-point scale. Although the VR is free and open source, there is, however, profit to be made in training faculty and providing instructional materials. Consultants could be licensed to use the VR database in analytics. The verified resume can help close the Lumina gap. My next step is bringing interested employers and colleges together. Thank you.
I wondered there, Arnold, the question of who verifies the verifiers popped into my mind. You spoke at the back end of your presentation about training faculty staff, but wouldn't that need to be the, absolutely the bit that comes first? Because we've had a lot of comments for us today about really how much does higher education understand what is needed? How could they really be verifiable unless we're more confident that that gap is closed?
What we did in a pilot is to ask supervisors subsequent. So in an example, for example, if I had given a 5 on oral communication and the supervisor comes back and says 5, he's inarticulate, then I know I have a problem. Now, the way I see it, let's say it's the Health Sciences Division of the community college. So the dean is looking over it and he sees the grades are not right. That means he has to sit down with the faculty and actually change their behavior and make sure that, in fact, everybody is convinced about what looks like a good presentation in a healthcare setting.
I'm going to go the other way around. Jamie, what leapt out for you?
So,
I'm sorry, I actually really literally meant to go the other way around. Michael. Apologies.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, so is the adopter then is the faculty? Is that right?
It's a college.
It's a college. Who's the decision maker?
Well, for example, Hopkins hires a lot of people from community colleges nearby. My next step when I get back is to try to get the head of HR and the dean or the president of the college to sit down together. And the college says, gee, the employer, Hopkins, says we really like this sort of thing. And the president could say, well, the hell with it, and walk away. But given the competition for students, especially in this changing academic world, my guess is they will listen. And colleges are doing it. Kathy Manis at the community colleges suggests that, yeah, they're willing and able to do this. And it starts that conversation that we heard of before, because now you talk to the supervisor. Let's say the oral communication is with patients. And she says, look, they can't yell in the patient's ear or whatever they have to say, but there is that back and forth, but over something concrete, real, not general skills are not right or they should work harder, but it is over the way they communicate with patients in this ward is not the way we do it at Hopkins.
I'm going to bring in Doreen now.
Yeah, so how do you account for the subjectivity that enters in? If you have 10 different verifiers, they're potentially having 10 different perspectives of what a 5 is. How do you account for that?
Okay, I talked to Doug Becker of Laureate, who's got 75 colleges. And we most likely will work together to find a way to make sure everybody agrees on what that is. Now, how do you know what a B at Georgetown is in English 101? We know the correlation between grades from English teachers is all over the lot. So it's a continuing problem, but it is doable. In one situation, we videotape speaking, and we send the video to somebody else, and they come to an agreement. Sort of in the same way, how do I know the three of you are going to be equally judging what we do?
Seems unlikely.
It seems unlikely.
Fair, thank you.
So I have a question about I'm very intrigued by the LinkedIn connection and how real is that? But second, I'm interested in, if you think about LinkedIn started out as a place where you could essentially put your resume, right? But what it's become is an entity that's actually in the skills verification certification process, or that's the direction it's going. So the question is, I guess, how relevant is the resume? LinkedIn's got the capacity in some ways to actually do a lot of this stuff, right? Because if you could crowdsource the skills and knowledge and those soft skills that you're talking about via LinkedIn without having to go through the process of developing a resume. A resume almost seems like a rearview mirror idea. Shouldn't you be using the platform of LinkedIn to actually create a different tool than a resume based on this crowdsourced verification process?
It's the same tool, but I talked to a recruiter at Hopkins in the hospital area, I think. She says they look through LinkedIn to find people. But then she spends an awful lot of time checking up as to, you recommended this young lady can walk on water. Did you see her walk on water? And it's frequently her brother-in-law who thinks only his wife walks on water. But the situation is that everybody and anybody can put in a recommendation to LinkedIn. This way, a professor or a department or both have signed off that so-and-so is responsible. Not because they took a test on what makes you responsible, but because indeed they were responsible. They worked on a project, they got their stuff in on time, it was quality, they did what they had to do, so there's an observation of these skills, which are very difficult, if not impossible, to test in an objective way. We don't ask people, give me 12 reasons about how to play a violin. We listen to them play the violin, and the violin teacher says he's good, and if that teacher has a good reputation, then they get the post at the Philharmonic.
Lovely. Always end on a good metaphor. Thank you very much, Arnold.
Thank you
very much for sharing
Thank
your
you.
presentation with us. Right, our final contestant, Diana Coburg. Are you going to step up, please, and share your ideas with us?
Hi, everyone. My name's Diana Cobb, and I'm the founder of an ed tech company called On Campus. And it's my years of experience as a teacher and a college and career consultant that have helped me craft the solution that I'm presenting here today. So we have a really big problem. The education to employment system is not working for students or employers. 44% of recent grads are underemployed, and 58% of employers say that students are not work ready. What's really going on behind these numbers is that employers are unable to articulate their job and skills requirements to students at the right place, at the right time, and through the right channels. But On Campus has a solution to this problem. So On Campus is a mobile app and gamified social learning platform that rewards students for building skills that employers need. Each day, students meet a new employer. We bring together students and employers on our platform, and if, for example, Google was today's employer, students would try to unlock Google's headquarters by completing 2 employability menus that basically show their interest in the company. Employers upload their job and skills requirements into these menus, and then students respond to them by choosing coursework or activities that they can use to build those skills while in college. As students build skills, they earn points, which are then compiled into an employability score that employers can use to recruit students. So let's take an in-depth look at one of our menus. This is our featured job menu, and Google has uploaded a description for a software engineer. If students have a question about the job, they can post it to the forum, where it'll be answered later that day by Google employees. If they're interested in the job, they can add it to their jobs profile, where we provide them with a 3-step roadmap to build the skills they need. The first step, am I ready? It's a checklist of all the soft and hard skills that students need for this job. Second step, my course option, links to the courses that they can take through their university. And finally, build my path. We track and validate their skill development for this particular job. In closing, I'm thrilled to announce actually that Kaplan University and Indiana U Purdue University will be participating in our beta test in January of next year, and they will bring their employer networks on board as well. And Salesforce Foundation is pitching us to build on their new platform for higher education, which is called Salesforce One, which would give us access to over 1,400 colleges nationwide. And finally, we're really encouraged by all the positive feedback that we've received for our minimum viable product, and we look forward to taking the next step, which is building our prototype. Thank you.
I love this graphic. It reminds me of those board games, you know, you had to get around the sort of snakes and ladders and possibly through the dungeon in order to get to the treasure,
right.
Which is really, you know, exactly what graduates should want. But what about the sort of the slightly random factor in human affairs, whether it's about employment, whether it's about assessing people? And, you know, I could imagine some people doing very, very well at checklists, but still not being the person that I should have hired, as opposed to the person who passed very well on a lot of things on the checklist, but just kind of has something that maybe you haven't thought to put in your list or might just add extra value that I haven't considered.
Okay, well, so this is one layer of the actual platform. So what happens is when you're on the platform for 24 hours, you basically get to see, employers get to see who's basically downloading your job. Who is it that has started making progress and saying, okay, I'm taking courses for this particular job, I'm doing activities, that gets relayed to employers. So they're getting a different perspective then. Plus, after the 24-hour period, we have what we call Virtual Rush Week, which is once a month, at the end of the month. Students start targeting companies and following companies, and then they can attend their Virtual Rush Week, which basically means I can go to a company's forum. Each company has a forum on our platform. And as an employer, I can now get to know students at a whole different level, depending on what it is that I would like to do, how much time I would like to take with those particular students, and what is it that I'm looking for? Do I want to tell them about some exciting new innovations our company's doing, or am I looking for something specific, another specific skill?
Fine. Okay, Doreen, you're on.
Congratulations, it's a very interesting idea.
Thank you.
Have you thought about your target audience? Are you thinking more about undergrads? Are you thinking about graduate programs? How does that play out for you?
Yes, so we have several different models and options. When we were talking to career people, it's interesting because everybody sees something different in this depending on the need of their college. Like some people said at Indiana U, Jen Schott works with the undergraduates there, and she said, this is the perfect thing she said, I would introduce this at orientation for my freshmen. When they came in, it's a great career exploration tool because every single day you're actually looking at a new employer. And one thing I didn't mention is that employers actually upload 3 featured jobs from 3 different majors, because I'm personally a great believer in the liberal arts, and I think there is a place for the liberal arts degree, and I feel like that the skills that they can actually earn there should give them credit. So they have that option. So just because I'm at Google, I'm not necessarily using just a software engineered job. So yes, different models, and also there is a version for high schools that we anticipate. Starting with 11th and 12th graders, there's a way we can scale this down. It won't be quite what it is here, but it'll be a modified version, but still getting that same feel of, I'm starting to get a sense of what the employer is actually looking for today that I can start working on later on.
Michael.
Do you have any information on monetization or pricing as you get out of beta?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. Money, it's what makes the world go round. But also it's difficult. So McKinsey did a study a couple of years ago, and they found that the models that actually were the most transformative were those where colleges and employers were responsible, both the stakeholders essentially were paying for the actual product. Because then there's ownership, there's responsibility. We have a list of all the 4-year colleges in America and all their attrition rates for freshmen and what it costs them. And we believe this is actually a great model for engagement, because all of a sudden, as a student, I'm starting to make informed decisions about where I should spend my time because I've got something tangible that I can see. So, and we think that that will transfer to engagement. So we'd actually like to look to probably take some of the, the cost savings that we're saving colleges. We'd like to recoup some of that, and certainly employers would definitely pay for a place on our platform for the 24-hour space and then for the other spaces.
Can you talk more about the user experience side of this? I'm trying to understand from the student perspective, how long do you use the app? And does it become repetitive at a certain point? In other words, once you've made some decisions, is the app no longer useful to you? Can you talk a little bit more about, the student user perspective?
Yeah, well, so the app, it's, as I said, each day it's a new employer. So for freshmen, for example, I believe personally there is a point where you can only save so many jobs. I think we allow you to save 12 jobs, and at some point it goes to that whole process, that whole thing about indecision with kids today. They like so many options, but they won't commit to anything. It's all well and good to say, yeah, I'm doing all these courses and I'm doing this, but at some point you have to say, well, what am I doing it for? And it's not that we're locking you into a particular job. If you say, this is what I'm doing for 5 jobs, that's great. But there's nothing to stop you from continuing to look. But what we want to see, we actually have levels and an employability score, and you can't go up to the next level until we have a certain score for coursework, work experience, and extracurricular activities. And so we're looking at that balance that we've all heard today that people are looking for in the skills gap. You can't move up. You might have all the courses, or you might have one particular thing, but to go up to the next level, you actually have to have a balance of those 3. So you're always striving.
You need to wrap up now.
Yeah, sorry. So you're always striving to find that balance.
Thank you.
Great, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. You're welcome.
Right. Now, we're going to keep you in suspense for a very short while longer, not so long, don't worry. But really, just before we announce the winner, I thought it would be great, really, to get impressions here from our august panel on the quality of the ideas they heard, what appealed to them, and possibly any areas that they thought were missing. Jamie.
Yeah, so first I want to say each of these is very compelling. I'm really intrigued by each of them for different reasons. So I think we landed in a good place with three ideas, but 3 very different ideas. And I think, so let me just go through each of them very quickly. In Aaron's case, I think the biggest challenge is getting from here to there. I think he's got a lot more work to do to figure out the relationship with the recruiters, what the demand is. But I think that idea could be very powerful over time in the market. In Arnold's case, I very much like the idea of being able to verify those skills, et cetera. I wonder whether LinkedIn could do this without him. That's just something I'm not sure whether this idea of the verified resume is really what employers are looking for. They may be looking for a different tool. And I think again, a very powerful idea in Diana's case. I think the question in Diana's case is going to be the question about how this thing might make money over time and what the revenue model really is. So each quite interesting. Each has some issues that I think getting to scale is something that they're going to really want to focus on.
Great, Michael?
Yeah, I think the first 2 are kind of still at the concept stage, whereas on campus, at this point has an MVP and has kind of committed pilot clients, which is always a good first step. All 3 suffer from kind of market friction of dealing with complex decision-making processes and committees in higher education, which Matt and I are intimately familiar, and probably many of you are here. I think the first one had a Lumina Foundation partnership. The last one had a kind of Salesforce partnership. That might help to a degree, but they haven't really thought their way out of market friction, which they would need to do to be investable.
And market, I'm going to just hurry us along a little bit, I think.
Yeah.
Market friction sounds like something terribly uncomfortable. Suffering from market friction. Doreen.
Yeah. All three of them in different ways are getting at this issue of insight. And being able to, as an employer, if I have my employer hat on, understanding better the talent that I'm trying to hire, because there is a high cost, as we heard, of turnover. And also, the other piece of it is the student's perspective, and getting better insight into what those jobs are so that they can really assess whether they are a good fit going in, and that's equally important. So I liked all three of them for different reasons, but the outcomes are very similar, oddly enough.
Yes, although there were sort of diverse ideas. Well, look, I think we've kept our poor contenders in suspense for long enough. So Erin, Arnold, Dana, that were fantastic presentations. And the winner is Diana. You've earned it.